Hello and welcome to my studio. I'm Jessie and this is the Knit Up and Dye podcast, episode 130, 8 months later. You're going to see a lot of changes simply because I had a laptop that is failing me. It had some outdated software on it that I did my editing on, and that is gone. So I'm going to be learning some new editing software. It's got some new bells and whistles. It's going to look a little different. In doing that, I may or may not have lost my intro, which was very dear to my heart, and hopefully I'll be able to recover that eventually. It may be recovered here by the time I get done editing, but you're going to see some changes. You're also going to see some changes in my introduction. Eventually, I hope to get back to thanking everybody. That's not going to happen today. I love you. Thank you. I can't believe the number of you that continue to reach out to me after 8 months, that are continuing to subscribe, that are continuing to watch, that are hanging on with me. Thank you. Thank you. You can't even begin to imagine what that means to me. This hiatus has been good for me. It took longer than I expected. I'm still not 100%, but I'm trying. And that's all we can really do is just try. So I'm back, I hope. Maybe. We'll see how this goes. This is going to be a little bit more sporadic. It's not going to be as tightly scheduled. At one point I was doing an episode a week. I'm going to try to loosen up a little bit and be less regimented, less organized, less self-demanding. This hiatus, I've learned a lot. I've learned a lot about myself. I've learned a lot about how I handle stress, about the damage it does to me, about compassion, self-compassion. We are, I think, as a culture, not great about that. We talk all the time about, oh, be good to yourself and take care of yourself. But do you know how to do that? Do you know what that means? It's more than, oh, tonight I'm going to take myself out to dinner. It's more than, I'm going to sit in a hot bath tonight. It's a regimented mindset. Taking care of yourself, it's about putting yourself first and not letting the gremlins tell you what to do. The gremlins in your head, the gremlins in your heart, the gremlins all around you. It's about not gauging your worth against your accomplishments. And that has been a difficult lesson for me to accept tutoring in. I haven't learned it yet. I'm still learning it. But one of the things that I do that takes care of me is this. And I've missed it. It took me probably 4 or 5 months to get to a point where my headspace started to let it in again and I started to think about it again. I needed the break. I needed time off. I needed to not be so regimented. In the midst of all of this, we've had a pandemic, I don't know if you noticed, and that has impacted me greatly as well, in that I'm an indie dyer. And with international shutdowns, we weren't getting supply. We still aren't getting supply. So I haven't been getting bases in. And where we couldn't get vinegar, I couldn't get wool base, where I couldn't get dyes in, everything came to a grinding halt. And that was good. It wasn't great for my business, but it has been good because it was a forced vacation, really, in that I couldn't do anything. I didn't have anything to do anything with. I could not be productive. And I really had to put everything on the back burner. And while so many people have been impacted so negatively, myself included, there are good things happening. And we need to recognize that change is good, that some of this has had positive outcome, and make lemonade. In my 8 months of not spending time with you, I spent some time with some wool. I have here 6 completed sweaters, a shawl, and a cowl. I have plenty to talk to you folks about. That is a good thing as well, because I was really feeling a lot of pressure to constantly produce, to constantly have something new and exciting to show you folks and to share. I want to share. I want to interact with you. And I just could not produce knitting and dyeing. I could not produce projects. I could not produce content, enough of anything, and produce a podcast as quickly as I wanted to. And instead of recognizing that and slowing down, I pushed harder and harder and harder. That's not healthy. It's not healthy. Now I feel better. I have a sense of what I actually get done, because I had to pile it up. I had to see what did 8 months do? What was 8 months? I had to really look at what I was doing to myself, what I thought was expected of me. And I've redefined a lot of things. I've knit a lot of sweaters, a lot of sweaters. And if you followed me for any period of time, you know that I used to refer to them as S words. I was terrified of them. I had numerous failed projects that were sweaters. It was something that I had basically written off, that was not going to be part of the projects that I did, something that I was happy with, something that I could enjoy. I've proven myself wrong. I have enjoyed, I have learned, I have modified, I have had a great time with sweaters. This is what I've accomplished in the 8 months that I wasn't podcasting. And socks that aren't piled up here, and another sweater that's in a project bag, and the How to Eat an Elephant blanket that I've been working on, and actually keeping up with my goals on. That's a lot. I was not as productive when I was podcasting, mainly because this takes a lot of time, but also because I was so self-stressed and trying so hard to do so many things that I wasn't loving what I was doing. If you don't love it, don't do it. Or change the reasons that you're doing it and find love again. I've enjoyed this. I need to be fair and say that I've been home. I'm working remotely for the company that I work for 4 days a week. And that, losing my commute time, not having to commute but 15 feet, makes a huge difference in my knit time. I've had a lot more time to be able to knit. I haven't been producing for my company because I haven't had yarn base. That frees up weekends. That frees up a lot of time as well, where I could sit and knit. This level of production is not going to continue. I'm not going to be knocking out a sweater a month going forward. I know that. But my appreciation of what I can do is much, much higher. We're going to talk about the projects. We're not going to talk about them all at once. They're going to get doled out. We're also going to talk about loving yourself and being kind to yourself and being accepting of yourself and reducing your stress and all the things that I've always talked to you guys about, all the things that I've learned and incorporated into my knitting, my life, my world. Big on that list for me is being kind to yourself and learning self-compassion. Part of the reason I stopped podcasting, above and beyond all the stuff that I just mentioned to you, was, and I think I might have mentioned it in the last episode, that I do suffer from depression, and that was rolling in hard. Depression can be chemical, it can be cyclical, it can be triggered. Definitely I had pressure cooked myself. Absolutely. And that was contributing. But what I haven't talked to you about is where my depression stems from. A little bit I have. I have PTSD. I have some past early life trauma that triggers and can come back up from time to time and trigger some depression. Above and beyond that, I have autoimmune disease. That means that my immune system is hyperactive, just like I am, and it wants too hard to do its job, and that means that it attacks healthy things as well. That attack can include my organs, including my brain, and it can cause depression. It can also cause a lot of joint pain. And y'all have seen me go through physical therapy. You've seen me correct my posture. You've seen me talk about doing exercises. You've seen me have times where I was in a lot of pain and couldn't knit. What I wasn't paying attention to, was I wasn't aware of, while I thought that it was stress, and while I thought that it was overuse, and those were contributing factors, was that I wasn't paying attention to that it was my autoimmune. That I was doing so many things to stay healthy that I was too healthy. And I was actually causing a lot of my own pain just by trying to be healthy. That is just a nasty cycle, let me tell you. Any of you that deal with arthritis, inflammation, autoimmune disease, anything like that, age, you have my sympathies like never before. I've learned a lot. I've learned a lot about my body. I've learned a lot about my health. I've learned that too healthy can be bad. I've learned that stress and too healthy can be catastrophic. And even while I accomplished all this, I did it in pain, bad pain. My autoimmune has flared up very, very dramatically, more so than I've ever had in my life. Some of that is triggered by the stresses that we're going through right now. Some of that is just plain my age. Some of that is the progression of my autoimmune disease. But in it this time, it has affected my hands, wrists, elbows, shoulders, knees, hips, back, spine, everything. Much more so than I have ever had before. And I've had a lot of very significant hand pain, body pain, aches and fatigue. You don't want to do anything when you feel like that. You don't want to do anything. Never mind if you love it. You don't want to do anything. You just plain hurt. The only upside I have to this is that when I could push through and recognize, I want to do this, I love to do this, doing it did not exacerbate or contribute more to my pain. The pain was there. It's always there. Knitting didn't make it worse. I was only limited by how much I could tolerate. I am not a pill taker. I eat very naturally. I'm very careful with my diet. I'm too healthy. I'm too healthy. I've had to learn that I will need to rely on a prescription. I've had to learn that when it hurts, maybe you better take an aspirin, which sounds ridiculous, but I'm just not somebody who generally takes painkillers or anything other than a vitamin D capsule. There have been modifications. I've had to modify my diet ever more so than I already did. I've had to modify my lifestyle considerably to make sure that I can do this for the next 40 years and be happy doing it. That's important to me. I don't want to walk away from this. I don't want to give up because of the shell that I wear. My soul, my spirit, my heart loves this and loves you and loves interacting and being part of the knit community. And so I'm pushing forward. It's not going to be easy. It isn't even now. I'm not prepared. I am emotional, but I'm going to try. I'm going to try. So we're going to plunder ahead if you wish to continue with me on this journey, and we're going to see how far we get. And it's feeling like a good thing. It is. Part of my less regimented is I'm not going to be preparing show notes initially, or maybe at all. I don't know. We're basically going to go off of what I know I've done for now, and things that come up, things that come to mind that I want to share. One such thing was something I observed in another podcast recently that is a tip, trick, knowledge kind of thing about knitting that I think a lot of us aren't aware, and I can make better for all of us. I remember one of the first sweater projects that I ever did. They had you start the ribbing on one needle, and then you changed needles to continue on the body. And the instruction was, cast on using a US 6, do ribbing for so long, change to US 8. It seems simple, right? If you know, then it's simple. If you don't know, you can take a long way around the barn and come out with the same thing, but in the hardest way possible. And I want to explain that. When I first did that sweater, when I first came across an instruction like that, I thought every one of those stitches needed to be slid from a US 6 to a US 8 needle before I could continue my work. It's not that way. In color work, in a pattern recently, I had an instruction to change the needle size for the row that the color work was in and then alternate back down to the other one. This seems really straightforward. With the advent of interchangeable needles, super easy, right? You unscrew the tip, you screw on the right tip, you're good to go. It is that simple. What needs to be understood is you don't have to change everything, everything. When you change to the next needle size, that doesn't mean that you have to change both points immediately. That doesn't mean that you have to slide all the stitches from one needle to the other. It only means that you need to start working with the working needle in the new size. The holding needle, the passive needle, doesn't need to change. Why? Because your next row stitches are only formed by the yarn going around the needle that you're working with. So if you've knit to gauge on a 6 for X amount of time and you change to an 8, that very first stitch is wrapping around the 8 and it's forming at the new gauge. The needle that you're working off of has nothing to do with the new gauge, only with the old gauge. Does that make sense? I hope so. I watched another podcast where they were really challenged and they were sliding all the stitches to the new needle, making those stitches really, really tight on the new larger needle, working that row in the larger needle and then sliding all those stitches back to the smaller needle, where all of a sudden they're all loosey-goosey, and working the small one. And it was like stressful and overworking, and I just wanted to reach out and save that knitter and go, no, only change your working needle for that row and then change back to the next working needle. Don't overthink it. The instruction couldn't be simpler. We overthink things. We overwork things. I am the high queen of overworking things. I wish I had known then what I know now. I wish I knew that gauge is only dictated by the working needle, not by the resting needle. Take that in, work with that, make that easier in your world if you have the opportunity to. I want to impart the ease of this as much as possible to you. If you have questions about that, if I have confused you ever so much more, tell me, let me know, and I will try to articulate that better, and certainly I will reply to you in person about that. Interchangeable needles are fantastic. If you don't have the ability to simply snap off and snap on the correct working needle tip point, even just a fixed circular, just use a new circular and work that working needle across as the new line. You can do this, it's easy. Let's take a look at the first sweater. We're only going to address a sweater an episode here as I work down through this pile. That gives me a few episodes of something to talk to you about. We're going to talk about the very first project that I finished after the last episode that I did. And I refer to this as the origami sweater. I'm pretty sure that's what the pattern name is. I'm going to look it up. And my apologies, this is part of the I'm not so prepared as I used to be. But we're going to stumble through this together. My origami sweater is, I'm almost positive it's actually called that. Why am I not seeing it? Because that would make perfect sense that I'm not seeing it. Yes, the pattern is origami. I am so sorry. I'm going to mutilate this name. I don't mean to. It is not intentional. Lonnie Keldson? I don't know how to pronounce her name. I'm sorry. It is called origami. I'll have the name down here below if I can get the software to insert subtitles for me. This sweater is I worked it on a US 9, and I used worsted weight yarn for this. I used Cascade 220 in black, and I used my Salsa Monkey worsted weight in Does He Have a Brother colorway. This is my yarn. This sweater has a funnel neck on it, and it has a ribbing. It's a 3-1 ribbing, so 3 knits and a purl, and it is worked from the bottom up, which was different for me. I really prefer to do projects from the top down. I'm short-waisted, and I like having the ability to adjust the length of the sweater very easily without guessing where my armpits are going to be, especially where I have a very large measurement here compared to most people, and I need to lengthen and deepen my arm sleeve holes a little bit to be comfortable in my sweaters. So this one was a challenge for me. It is a seamless. You knit it from the bottom up, and I started with my light color, and it pooled in a really neat way. I've had a couple of people tell me that they could see the face of a monkey on one side, which I find absolutely hysterical. I'm not seeing it. I think they said that there's like a monkey face over, I don't know. The camera picks it up interestingly and can really see the striping. You don't see it so much in person, but it is a 1x1 stripe in stockinette on a US 9. And the colorway just pooled really interestingly that the camera picks up, but I don't think you see as much in person. The sleeves are then picked up. It is a square sleeve, and you knit down to the ribbing here, and the ribbing at the hip and on the wrist matches the ribbing at the top here in this yoke. I love it. It's comfortable. It is a nice funnel neck, so it comes up. I like the two-tone. It can be very casual. It can be very dressy. You could wear this with jeans, obviously, or you could wear this with a long black skirt, anything. It's very flexible. It works with my wardrobe nicely. This got finished for me. I finished this project in March, I believe, and so I have been able to wear it exactly once because it's been warm weather in New Mexico, and I have a whole pile of sweaters that I have knit, and I think of these I have worn 3 of them exactly once. So I have a lot of sweater wearing ahead of me. The pattern was easy to read, easy to understand. It was easy to adjust distances and such on. I really enjoyed this project. My only challenge with this was that it's a little bit where this meets here at the neck. I don't like things touching here. And so I had to funnel it up a little bit higher, I think, than the pattern calls for, just so that I didn't feel like I had something right there against my neck. I think I have an easy cough trigger, and having a seam or a neckline right there makes me crazy. It irritates me. Other than that, it was really easy to work. I like the sleeve length. I didn't have to modify that. The pattern was, like I said, easy to read, easy to adjust if you need to. So very, very happy with that project. It was a stretch for me. I had not done a sweater that was bottom up seamless like that before. And I was a little bit nervous about it. There were a lot of notes online that helped me. I did look at multiple project pages on Ravelry and really kind of weighed out what other people were saying about it and the changes that they made. In retrospect, I think I would have made the body shorter rather than longer. It is quite long on me. That's nice in that it's kind of tunic length and I can wear it with, you know, some leggings if I wanted to. But I generally like my sweaters longer, but this one's a little bit too long. And that was more about the weight of the yarn, because it is worsted weight, and the looser gauge, because it is up on a 9, that it's growing a little bit. The yarns were delightful to work with. I really enjoy Cascade 220. It is a workhorse. It is affordable. Their solid colors match just about anything that you want. And they play very nicely with indie dyed yarns in that it gives you a jumping off point. It gives you a solid to really make your hand dyed sing. Of course, I love the Dye Monkey yarns. Who wouldn't? They are beautiful. I had never done a project of this size with my yarn before. It was really fun. I enjoyed it. I was a little bit nervous about the pooling of it, and I've come to a point where I didn't care. I am embracing. I'm fighting against every step of the way, I bet you can tell. I'm trying to embrace letting it happen, not fighting against everything, including pooling and flashing. I think it gives this sweater character. I think it gives it interest in that it catches your eye. You're kind of like, is it striped? What's going on there? And honestly, to have fought against it in this particular project, when you're knitting it, when you're close to it, you can't see it. I don't know if I can get it close enough for you to be able to tell that you can't see that it's going to do that with these diagonal slashes when you're actually working it. My vision does not work as well as this camera does. I am always impressed. I have always been fascinated by how when I hold a project up for you guys, I look in the monitor over here and it looks completely different than what I'm seeing in person. The eye self-edits. The eye smooths and adds an emotional quality to what you're seeing and alters things slightly for you so that your brain comprehends and makes sense. And the camera does not do that. The camera does not edit. The camera just does what it's been trained to do, what it's capable of doing. And that's an interesting observation about the human quality, about the human mind, about how emotion changes our perception. I think that's a beautiful thing. I think that's why I'm so fascinated by the human element that doesn't see it and the digital device that does. Human is good. Human has flaws. We can self-edit and find appreciation in the flaws and just enjoy the project without worrying about exactly what it's telling us. That's what I have for you. I'm not going to push today. I talked to you a little bit about working needle gauge. I talked to you about this sweater. I talked to you about why I'm here. I talked to you about why I wasn't. And I hope to talk to you again soon about the next sweater in the pile, and we'll go from there. I'm going to go learn some software, and I'm going to go fight through some upload times, and I'm going to try to embrace this and not feel like it's work, that it's something I want to do. And we're going to see how that goes. And I hope to see you again soon. Thank you for staying with me. Thank you for being a part of this. Thank you for being you. And take care of you. Really take care of you. Bye.